Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Learning and Mending Post-Human Infrastructure. As we get into our squares this evening, I'm going to start out with sharing our embroidery of the week. And this week, we have a special embroidery done by Martha Willem. And this is the California Poppy. And I have to say, I know I've said this in the past, I hate to repeat myself, but it's gorgeous on the front and equally on the back. Mine is always a big like floss mess on the back, and it looks like craziness. This is just absolutely so well done. I try every single time to do that, but it never ends up this beautiful. So I just want to zoom in real quick so you can see that. I mean, it's just absolutely so beautiful in the detail that she did and the shading with the color. So it seems like we are all kind of settling in, but I want to start out with our popcorn introductions. So I'll start. What we do is we'll say our name and what we're working on and where we're zooming in from and our pronouns. So again, I'm Jen, and tonight I am going to be continuing my buffalo. Slowly but surely I'm getting there. And I use she, her pronouns, and I am zooming in from Studio City. And now I would like to pass it off to Ansu.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to be back. It's nice to see you all. I'm zooming in from Eagle Rock, and I go by she, her pronouns. And tonight I am going to work on cleaning up my mess. I'm getting into a zen here. So I look forward to hearing the reading, and I will popcorn it over to Stefano.
Hi, I'm Stefano. How's it going, everyone? I'm excited to be here. Excited to hear this episode with Mish and the compost and the worms and all that good stuff. And I'm gonna pass it on to, let me see. Oh, Yeva, if he's there. If not, Emily.
I'm here.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Yeva. I'm calling in from Glendale. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm working on the corn. I've made progress. So I'm sorry, I started the kernels now. Gonna keep working on that. And I'm gonna popcorn it over to Lee Adams.
Thank you, Yeva. Hi, I'm Lee Adams. I'm zooming in from Altadena. I use she, her pronouns. I'm at the bare beginning of working on the corn and enjoying doing that. And just delighted to be here again. This conversation lights me up. So let me send this to Drea.
Hello. Andrea here, calling in from Windsor Square, Los Angeles, California. Go by she, her pronouns, and I'm working on the buffalo, really almost done, but trying out a new stitch kind of in the cloud area. So we'll see how that looks, but really excited about it, and then excited to start the next one. And let's see, I will pass it on to, how about Marcella?
Hi. Hold on.
Oh, you're on mute.
There you go. Hi, I'm at downtown LA and I forgot my stitching stuff, but I thought I could still enjoy and be quiet and listen to these beautiful conversations that I so look forward. I missed the last one and I missed it the whole week. It really feels a very special place in my heart. So it's good to see all of you. And I am going to ask, let's see, Alex, that I just spent the whole afternoon with him doing clay.
It's good to see you again. Hi, everybody. I'm Alex Tanasi, and I'm calling from Mar Vista. And I'm also working on the corn. It seems like we're all kind of working on it. I just started. I'm hoping I can have a little luck with it, and I'll see how it goes. And I'm really excited about this reading. I get to work with Mish a lot, and he's brilliant, and I've learned a lot from him with compost, and really excited for his reading and to hear his knowledge on this. And I will pass it on to Matt.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt, he, him pronouns. I am calling in from Metabolic Studios Moon site, right by the LA River. And yeah, excited to hear some of the reading and just continue the good conversations going here. Got no kiss, so. Sorry. Who has not gone? I'll pass it. Alexandra.
Hi, I'm Alex or Alexandra, both work. I use the she, her pronouns, and I'm calling in from Providence, Rhode Island. I'm just planning to listen to the reading again and read with everyone. And I'll pass it on to Cynthia.
Hi, I'm Cynthia. I'm calling in from West Covina. I don't have my embroidery out, but I will. And happy to be here. I'll pass it on to, I think we've all gone. Shelley, maybe?
Hi, I'm Shelley, she, her pronouns. I'm in La Crescenta. Really sorry I missed last week with Lee and the Beavers. That sounded great. I am not going to be crafting today. I will probably be playing with my foster kittens, my feral foster kittens. So I'll put my camera on and off depending on what they're doing. Thanks, guys. Glad to be here. Who hasn't gone yet? Jamie, have you gone? Jamie Joy?
No, I haven't gone. Hi, I'm Jamie. I live in Washington State. I go by she, her pronouns. It's my first time here. I happen to be working on a knitted scarf, which I'm always working on something living up here in the north. But it's my first time, so I don't really know what goes on. I just found my way here, so I'm going to trust that for now. Thank you, everybody, for the welcomes.
Well, welcome, Jamie, and I will take it from here. Welcome to our 9th edition of Learning and Mending Post-Human Infrastructure. This series, we will explore the commons of soil, the air we breathe, water, sound, and the potency of seed and mycelium networks. It involves letting go of outdated ideas that do not support and serve the life web. As a studio practice, we aim to facilitate this rebound and regeneration. We seek to engender self-propagating and self-generating feedback loops that feed the life web in places that have been ground down to inert state. Artists need to create on the same scale that society has the capacity to destroy. Posthumanism is a concept that critiques anthropocentrism and the philosophical branch of humanism, a dominant ethos that has shaped social relations and the way humans relate to non-human world for centuries. There is a rich discourse on posthumanism and posthuman. Therefore, there are many ways one might define these concepts. Posthumanism pushes back against the centering of the human and moves towards thinking that eradicates hierarchy of being and challenges the life, non-life binary. Posthumanism is an ontological pursuit of what it means to be human, what it means to be non-human, and where these categories rupture and collide. This is a 7-week series and will be facilitated by Millie Mason Moore, Metabolic Studio Farm Lab Coordinator. We are inspired generalists rather than experts and hope to facilitate an open community dialogue. This series will run each Tuesday, with the exception of skipping November 8th, and conclude on November 14th. If you would like to receive an embroidery kit from us, please send your name and mailing address to info@metabolicstudio.org. Tonight, we will share our screen displaying this week's reading. Feel free to jump in and read aloud from the text as you feel inspired, as we welcome one and all to both listen and giving voice to the unique texts we share each week. And now I will pass it over to Emily.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Emily, she, her pronouns, calling in from Echo Park with my 2 dogs, Bucky and Lulu. And tonight I'm going to fill in for our friend Lauren Bond, who usually reads our poem of the week. And I'm going to go ahead and read because she is in transit. So what we have is an excerpt from Spring Harvest, a poem by Jerry Windley Doust. I have come here to harvest humus from the rotten bottom of the compost I left by the apple tree last fall, raking away the shrouding cover of dry leaves, the dark heart of newborn earth. Leaning into the spade, I sliced through the soil and lift it into the rusty wheelbarrow. The apple tree stands by, her wide boughs bespangled with white blossoms. She has thrown herself into spring, pouring perfume over my head and over the greening land, with no thought to the cost. The bumblebees seem bedazzled. They float from bough to bough in reverent attendance. The swallows don't care. They kite and dive through the sweet air like children playing chase. The robins sing, the blackbirds scold, and gangs of house sparrows tumble through the yard like they own the place. The thieving squirrels race up and down the old maple in August. They will strip the tree of every unripe apple, sour though they be. But now I bend again to the spade. The only way to move the earth is one shovelful at a time, although it helps if you hum, as the wise and patient bees know. Soon enough, the barrow is full, and I stagger to the garden to spread blankets of good humus over the sun-warmed beds. The first stars are brightening, each trailing an entourage of worlds, most dead wastelands, and none with wonders to rival this prodigal tree, these ancient bees, or even this pile of rotting leaves. Let the unsold stars wheel through the night sky. The rest of us living things will sleep and rise, ready to take up once again the sweet work of living.
Thank you for reading that beautiful poem, Emily, and thank you for sharing that poem with us, Mish. Great evening, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Millie. I am currently zooming in from Glassell Park, adjacent to the Los Angeles River, and I'm always thrilled to virtually see you guys in these little boxes and just to be with you for, a couple hours just to learn and mend while we're together. This series of post-human infrastructure reading selections, again, were selected and chosen by my team at Farm Lab, at Metabolic Studio. Last week, we read about harvesting clay and processing it. As Alex had mentioned, he described the many uses that FarmLab undertakes with this amazing clay that he harvests, from making subterranean irrigation pots, or oyas as we call them, to seed pods. Now, again, please note, we are inspired and passionate generalists rather than experts on these following subjects. This week's reading topic is one of my favorite subjects, compost. Observing the natural processes at work within all living systems is witnessing the perpetual cycle of decomposition and rebirth, while acknowledging the twin aspects of the metabolic cycle governing all life forms, the anabolic and the catabolic. We will focus on the catabolic activity and celebrate the rot. Here are some guiding questions for our casual dialogue after the reading. Composting is nothing more than the practice of assisting with the decomposition of organic things in order to help sustain living systems. Can you think of other practices of undoing that can help revive the web of life? Again, should you not feel comfortable having a conversation when the time comes, feel free to just use the chat bar to add your questions, thoughts, dreams, or resources. Also note, anything added to the chat bar will be included on our Discord, Water Community Power. My colleague Matt, who is with us tonight, will be adding the Discord link to our chat bar. The Discord has been established to continue these dialogues and to open source our collective knowledge. Now, I would love to introduce our colleague Mish from FarmLab. Mish is a brilliant artist, master composter, and is filled with love for all living systems, as Alex had mentioned before, including the microscopic and macroscopic world in compost. He's constantly thinking about our waste stream and how FarmLab can devise special natural systems to decompose them. Let's give Mish a virtual round of applause, because he's such a great, amazing person. And before we begin our reading, Mish, again, I'd love to ask you to describe your experiences working with compost.
Because I'm not very good at improvising, I just wrote something very, very short, and that will probably help me start the evening. So when I started getting into ecology, gardening, living system, and just being curious about whatever grew around me, I was immediately attracted by what was happening to all these plants after they had bloomed, given seeds, and started breaking down. More than 10 years ago, some drastic changes in my life made me question most of the world I was unwillingly part of, and again, I turned my attention toward living system. And now in my work with Metabolic Studio and Lauren Bond and all the inspiring people within FarmLab, I was constantly challenged by new experimentation and concepts. Making compost and vermicompost became a journey of inquiry. I soon realized that what I was doing was literally undoing, helping the catabolic process break down these plants and witness the undoing of older living entities that soon would feed new emergent living system. This made me reconsider the value of compost as simply a resource for growers and rediscover the power of decomposition and recomposition taking place in the compost pile with potential for new life. Millie, you were mentioning the work within the studio and within FarmLab. I have to say that I didn't imagine when I started working with all this team that compost would take such an enormous amount of work and research. We are used to think as compost as inert matter, and it couldn't be far from the truth. I mean, compost is life itself, even though it seems by many, because it does, especially when you start your compost pile. Well, it could smell funky sometimes. It doesn't look appealing, especially when you start mixing things, and then it looks like a sludge. And once you start really looking, and that I owe this understanding to other members of the team who work with microorganisms way more than I do. Looking through a microscope, doing analysis, doing all sort of experiments, that what was happening in the compost pile was just actually the beginning of a new life. just not the one we are familiar with, not little creatures with cute eyes. I mean, what grows in a compost pile is, it's very far from the human world. It's not something we used to deal with. If we think microorganism, we just want to take a sponge and wipe out the counter. When you are in a compost pile, this is exactly what you're aiming for. And so working with the compost and all the experimentation taking place with FarmLab made me sort of take a step back and looking at what was happening under my eyes, and not just looking at the end product, which is earth repair and helping other plants and grow and thrive. It was really what was happening at this very simple matter, breaking down and becoming a huge potential. So that's what I've been doing mostly with FarmLab, and I'm so excited to just being challenged every day and learn things in a new way. So thank you.
Thank you, Mish. We appreciate all of your research, your insight, and one thing that I'd love to share with everyone else in this virtual window is that compost in FarmLab is the foundation of a lot of our experiments going forward, and we certainly appreciate it, and we all pitch in, and it is laborious, but what comes out is what I consider black gold. So thank you, Mish, for all of your work, and yeah, so I appreciate you. All right, so without further ado, Emily, let's go ahead and share your screen, and thank you, everyone, and we hope you enjoy this reading.
Welcoming the decomposition, the practice of composting. Entangled Life, Epilogue, This Compost by Merlin Sheldrake. As a child, I loved the autumn. Leaves fell from a large chestnut tree and gathered into drifts in the garden. I raked them into a pile and tended it carefully, adding fresh armfuls as the weeks went by. Before long, the piles grew large enough to fill several bathtubs. Again and again, I'd leap into the leaves from the low branches of the tree. Once inside, I'd wriggle until I was entirely submerged and lie buried in the rustle, lost in the curious smells. My father encouraged me to immerse myself in the world head first. He used to carry me around on his shoulders and bury my face in flowers as if I were a bee. We must have pollinated countless flowers as we shuffled from plant to plant, my cheeks smeared with yellows and oranges, my face scrunched into new shapes to better fit inside the pavilions that the petals made. Both of us delighted with the colors and smells and mess. My leaf piles were both places to hide and worlds to explore. But as months went by, the piles shrank. It became harder to submerge myself. I investigated, reaching down into the deepest regions of the heap, pulling out damp handfuls of what looked less and less like leaves and more like soil. Worms started to appear. Were they carrying the soil up into the pile or the leaves down into the soil? I was never sure. My sense was that the pile of leaves was sinking. But if it was sinking, what was it sinking into? How deep was the soil? What kept the world afloat on this solid sea? I asked my father. He gave me an answer. I replied with another why. No matter how many times I asked why, he always had an answer. These games of why would go on until I exhausted myself. It was in one of these binges that I first learned about decomposition. I struggled to imagine the invisible creatures that ate all the leaves and how such small beings could have such enormous appetites. I struggled to imagine how they could devour my leaf piles as I lay submerged in them. Why couldn't I see it happening? If their hunger was so fierce, surely I would be able to catch them in the act if I buried myself in the heap of leaves and lay there quietly enough. They always eluded me.
My father proposed an experiment. We cut the top off a clear plastic bottle. Into the bottle, we place alternating layers of soil, sand, dead leaves, and finally, a handful of earthworms. Over the next days, I watched the worms wind their way between the layers. They mixed and stirred. Nothing stayed still. Sand crept into soil and leaves crept into sand. The hard edges of layers dissolved into each other. The worms might be visible, my father explained, but there are many more creatures that behave like this that you can't see. Tiny worms, and creatures smaller than tiny worms, and creatures still smaller that don't look like worms, but are able to mix and stir and dissolve one thing into another, just like these worms can. Composers make pieces of music. These were decomposers who unmake pieces of life. Nothing could happen without them. This was such a useful idea. It was as if I'd been shown how to reverse, how to think backward. Now there were arrows that pointed in both directions at once. Composers make, decomposers unmake. And unless decomposers unmake, there isn't anything that the composers can make with. It was a thought that changed the way I understood the world.
Goddess Kali remains one of the most popular Hindu goddesses, yet one of the most mysterious deities of Hinduism. As an embodiment of time, change, and destruction, Kali devours all things. She is irresistibly attractive to mortals and gods, but can also represent, particularly in later traditions, the benevolence of a mother goddess. Often described as the devouring mother, Kali is also the goddess of rebirth. Kali's name derives from the Sanskrit meaning she who is black or she who is death. Kali is most often represented in art as a fearful fighting figure, a 4 to 6 or more armed woman, and in each of the arms is traditionally held a different weapon, one being a knife dripping with blood. She is seen wearing a tiara or crown, with either a necklace or belt made of skulls or heads, a shirt of arms, a lolling tongue. Often associated with sexuality and violence, Kali embodies Shakti, feminine energy, creativity, and fertility, and is an incarnation of Parvati, wife of the great Hindu god Shiva. She's the energy current inside of you that is wild, empowered, and all-loving. This energy is deeply involved in the life cycle that keeps us growing and transforming.
Why we must worship Goddess Kali. As the transforming power of time, she can usher us into a new era of global peace and understanding. Dr. David Frawley, American Institute of Vedic Studies, 2019. Ma Kali is the most misunderstood of all Hindu goddesses, though she is often regarded as the most powerful. Kali's dark and fierce form is certainly intimidating and hard to fathom, unless one is willing to look with discernment behind the veil of sensational images about her. Ma Kali was first introduced to the modern world by Ramakrishna Paramahansa as the Supreme Mother of the universe. Though Ramakrishna, an avatar for many, the inspiration of Ma Kali awoke India to its ancient spiritual heritage. This was at a time in which the world was dominated by colonial powers, and the idea of a universal mother was not accepted, much less a world mother who was dark in color and fierce in demeanor from a backward country like India. Nature of Ma Kali. Ma Kali is Kala Shakti, or the power of time. She indicates the impermanence of all things, which is why she wears a garland of skulls. Yet she is also the ultimate transforming power of time, which is to take us from death to immortality. Along with endless time, Kali is boundless space, the limitless void, indicated by her dark blue color. Her magical dance of transformation is all existence. Kali holds the Vidyut Shakti, the lightning or electrical force of consciousness that is the supreme power. All the goddesses and the entire universe manifests from her indomitable force. Kali's seed mantra is Cream, which is the Kriya Shakti, or power of transformation behind the vast movement of life.
Kali is not the goddess of death and destruction, as some see her, but on the contrary, represents the complete victory of the divine over all death and destruction. Her warrior goddess form removes all illusions of the mind and reveals the undying presence of our inmost self that is one with all. Kali reminds one of Tagore verses, "Let me carry death in life so that I may know life in death." Yet Ma Kali has a crucial social relevance today. Kali has the transforming power of time, can usher us into a new era of global peace and understanding if we can accept her demand for a real change of consciousness. Kali asks us to live for eternity, not merely for fleeting enjoyments or outer material gains. Those seeking to bring the divine light into the world should worship Ma Kali. Ma Kali, as the supreme form of Universal Mother, absorbs her children back into her blissful embrace. She takes us across the deepest darkness to reach the highest light. Jai Ma Kali.
Earth Repair, a grassroots guide to healing toxic and damaged landscapes by Leela Darwish, New Society Publishers, 2013. Chapter 4, Microbial Remediation. I really came to feel that the soil bacteria and the fungi are our allies. They want to help us. They're waiting for us to get it together. They are not going to save the world unless we do. But if we do, they are eager and willing to help us. They are enormous allies for us, and at the same time, they are the simplest, humblest organisms on the planet. Humble comes from the root word humus, which means close to the earth. In a very real sense, they are our ancestors. They are the first life forms, the original life that figured out the basic processes for sustaining life on the planet: photosynthesis, respiration, fermentation, how to use oxygen to burn food and make energy. Starhawk. Microbial remediation uses microorganisms to either degrade organic contaminants or to bind heavy metals in more inert and less bioavailable forms. Microorganisms break down contaminants by using them as a food source or metabolizing them with a food source. There are aerobic bacteria, and then there are anaerobic bacteria. Aerobic processes require an oxygen source, and the end products typically are carbon dioxide, water, and salts. Anaerobic processes are conducted in the absence of oxygen, and the end products can include methane, hydrogen gas, sulfates, elemental sulfur, and denitrogen gas. Microbial remediation can be facilitated either by breeding bacteria in high numbers and then introducing them into a contaminated area via aerobic compost, compost tea, or more anaerobic mix that you can purchase known as efficient microorganisms, or by creating the right conditions in affected soil or water so that they become an ideal habitat for bacteria growth to occur.
Microbial remediation principles for the grassroots remediator. We are working with valuable allies who are part of the soil food web. No foray into microbial remediation can begin without exploring the billions of tiny and powerful organisms that can be found living within the soil beneath, as well as on essentially every living surface of the world. In order to properly engage these microorganisms, we need to understand who they are and how they work. Dirt is not soil. Soil is alive. Dirt is dead. To grassroots microcore remediator Josh Schindler, soil is a living material composed of minerals, organisms, and the gases and water in between. Likened to an organ for the earth, similar to our skin, it is teeming with an enormous diversity of beings, both macro and microscopic, sharing an array of landscapes, food sources, and social roles. A single teaspoon of soil can contain billions of microscopic bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and nematodes, as well as earthworms, arthropods, and other visible crawling creatures. It is this diverse microbial life that fuels so many of the processes that transform and transport nutrients and minerals to the web of life. It is these organisms who can bind, immobilize, and transform a whole range of contaminants into less harmful substances. Microbial remediation is the basis for regenerating a damaged site. According to Marika Smith of the Victoria Compost Education Center, if you are doing any restoration project, healthy soil is the foundation. If you are doing any kind of replantings, it won't work if the soil complexity and soil chemistry aren't there. You really need healthy soil with the humus layer. It can take a few years to build the soil. Bacteria and fungi feed plants, and plants feed bacteria. When the plants need a certain mineral, it offers sugars to the microorganisms that can provide that mineral. In exchange for the sugar food created by plants, as well as the habitat created by their root systems, microorganisms transport and transform into more available forms different nutrients and minerals, as well as increase disease resistance in plants. In the process of feeding on plant materials and each other, these microorganisms also produce hormones and enzymes that plants need and consume or break down pollutants in the soil. In conventional remediation, bacteria are often fed a chemical-based fertilizer instead of a plant-based food. However, in grassroots microbial remediation, we need to work with plants to provide more sustainable, local, and balanced food sources for microorganisms. Also, plants can struggle growing in really damaged and contaminated soil with very minimal microbial life. Engaging in the microbial remediation by using highly biologically active compost and compost tea will help plants to grow and enhance their ability to survive in adverse conditions by reconnecting the powerful and enduring relationship between soil, microorganisms, and plants.
The best microbial remediation is done when there is a diversity of species present. When inoculating your site with beneficial bacteria, you want to provide a diverse array of these organisms. The more species and types of microorganisms that are present on your site, the higher the chance that some of them will be able to work with key contaminants, as not all microorganisms will be effective with a specific contaminant. Often, the microorganisms best suited to the job of remediating your site are those found on your site already or in your region. If you can find out who these microorganisms are and feed them with a variety of foods they like to eat, then you can work to boost their populations and help spur their natural processes of breaking down or binding contaminants. Getting started with your grassroots microbial remediation project. The following tools and methods are relatively easy and effective at introducing beneficial microorganisms to assist with site cleanup, recharge your soil ecology on damaged sites, and help kick off healing the land. What are the low-tech and high-impact ways that grassroots remediators can harness the power of these small but mighty microorganisms for earth repair? Through compost, compost tea, vermicomposting, and applying humic acid, to name a few. Method number 1, compost, compost, compost. For the grassroots remediator, compost is one of the most direct, easy, and accessible ways to inoculate a site with beneficial microorganisms, contaminant-binding humic acid, organic matter, and fertility. If made correctly, your compost will be full of a diversity of microorganisms that can break down, transform, or bind heavy metals and organic contaminants. Expensive to buy in large quantities, but free and easy to make, compost is the natural process and practice that decomposes and transforms organic waste sources that we find in excess all around us. By mixing materials high in nitrogen, also known as greens, with materials high in carbon, known as browns, we can create the ideal conditions for microorganisms to grow and flourish. Through their metabolic processes and time, materials can be broken down into a life-generating organic mixture, humus, that is rich in nutrients, minerals, and microbial life. The humus and humic acid produced via the composting process can either stabilize or assist in the degradation of contaminants. Humic substances have electrically charged sites on their surfaces that can attract and make certain contaminants inert.
A quick word of praise for wood chips. If you are trying to make a compost pile that is about microorganisms, wood chips are great as they have lots of surface area, create airspace, and allow your compost pile to hold on to its volume instead of shrinking down. Remember, when sourcing your material, do your best to ensure they are organic and have not been treated with chemicals. In the case of plant waste, vegetables, hay, grass, straw, antibiotics or hormones in the case of manures. The One Straw Revolution by Masanobu Fukuoka. No need to prepare compost. There is no need to prepare compost. I will not say that you do not need compost, only that there is no need to work hard making it. If straw is left lying on the surface of a field in the spring or fall and is covered with a thin layer of chicken manure or dog dropping, in 6 months it will completely decompose. Scattering straw maintains soil structure and enriches the earth so that prepared fertilizer becomes unnecessary. To make compost by visual method, the farmer works like crazy in the hot sun, chopping up the straw, adding water and lime, turning the pile, and hauling it out to a field. He puts himself through all this grief because he thinks it is a better way. I would rather see people just scattering straw or hulls or wood chips over their field. Traveling along the Tokaido line in Western Japan, I've noticed that the straw is being cut more coarsely than when I first started talking about spreading it uncut. I have to give the farmers credit, but the modern day experts are still saying that it's best to use only so many 100 pounds of straw per quarter acre. Why don't they say to put all the straw back in the field? Looking out the train window, you can see the farmers who have cut and scattered about half the straw and cast the rest aside to rot in the rain. If all the farmers in Japan got together and started to pull all the straw back in their field, the result would be an enormous amount of compost returned to the earth.
Wu Wei.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'll read a little bit and then I'll switch over to you. Wu Wei, do nothing. Wu Wei means in Chinese non-doing or doing nothing. It sounds like a pleasant invitation to relax, or worse, fall into laziness or apathy. Yet this concept is key to the noblest kind of action according to the philosophy of Taoism, and is at the heart of what it means to follow Tao or the way. According to the central text of Taoism, the Tao Te Ching, the way never acts, yet nothing is left undone. This is the paradox of Wu Wei. It doesn't mean not acting. It means effortless action or actionless action. It means being at peace while engaged in the most frenetic tasks so that one can carry these out with maximum skill and efficiency. Something of the meaning of Wu Wei is captured when we talk of being in the zone, at one with what we are doing, in a state of profound concentration and flow. Wu Wei is closely connected to the Taoist reverence for the natural world, for it means striving to make our behavior as spontaneous and inevitable as certain natural processes, and to ensure that we are swimming rather than, to ensure that we are swimming with rather than against currents. We are to be like the bamboo that bends in the wind or the plant that adjusts itself to the shape of the tree. Wu Wei involves letting go of ideals that we may otherwise try to force too violently onto things. It invites us instead to respond to the true demands of situations, which tend only, oh, I can't see, only to be noticed when we put our own ego-driven plans aside. What can follow is a loss of self-consciousness, a new unity between the self and its environment, which releases an energy that is normally held back by an overly aggressive, willful style of thinking. But none of this means we won't be able to change or affect things if we strive for Wu Wei. The Tao Te Ching points out that we should be like water, which is submissive and weak, and yet which can't be surpassed for attacking what is hard and strong. Through gentle persistence and a compliance with the specific shape of a problem, an obstacle can be worked round and gradually eroded.
Thank you all who read and listened and participated this evening. We hope you enjoyed tonight's reading. Just wanted to mention one of tonight's excerpts that resonated within me is the following. In Entangled Life, composers make, decomposers unmake. And unless decomposers unmake, there isn't anything that composers can make with. I found that to be very interesting and resonated with me. Metabolic Studio strives to continue addressing the environmental impacts of sending thousands of pounds of food waste and biomass to landfills. We also intend to keep using the healthy compost made by Mish and the entire Farm Lab team in our ongoing case studies of bioremediation. We also aim to sequester as much carbon as possible. So now, Mish, would you be so kind to repeat our guiding questions for this evening?
All right. So the guiding question actually consists of a prompt and a question. So the prompt is, composting is nothing more than the practice of assisting with the decomposition of organic matter in order to help sustaining living systems. And here's the question. can you think of other practices of undoing that can help revive the web of life? And I will post both the prompt and the question in the chat bar so that you can refer to it. You feel welcome to answer directly in the chat bar or in a group or later during the conversation. And it is now in the chat bar.
Jen, would you put us into our breakout rooms?
I will do that right now. You'll all go into your breakout rooms for about 10 to 12 minutes. I'll send a message a little bit before it's time to come back, so you have a chance to wrap up, and then we will reconvene in this group again. Enjoy.
I was about to say, did I leave the breakout room? But I see I did.
Yes, you did, Dee. Welcome back. Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. And welcome back to everyone else.
That was too short.
Yeah, that was too short. Oh, where's Adam? He was mid-sentence. Is he here? No, I think we lost him.
I'm here.
Oh, there
I'm here.
you are. Thank you. So yes, I will make sure to get you that information, Marcela, and then Adam. I'm so glad that you're having a compost dinner party. That's amazing.
That's the thing.
That's really cool.
Tell us about it. What does that mean? Compost dinner party.
People are eating bowlfuls of compost. That's all we're serving. No, I'm kidding. It's that we're just gathering friends from different spheres of our life to have like a facilitated dinner where the conversation is about composting. We want to start like a regular monthly sort of dinner thing, and the first theme that my friend suggested was composting. And so some of the foods will loosely tie into it. Like we'll do fermented foods like kimchi or pickling and things like that. And so that ties into this idea of decomposition, but like on the menu side, but then also throughout the dinner, there's like facilitated conversations around how people can be more aware of their food waste.
Very nice.
I'd like to remind people that composting can be awkward for someone in an apartment, but if you freeze your food waste, you've done the first step in composting. The expansion of the moisture in the cells breaks down those cells as they thaw. So freeze it and then take it to someone who does have a compost pile. And I find that really helpful. My landscaping partner actually keeps a bucket in his freezer because he cooks a great deal. And so that's one of our chores in the office, is to take the bucket out of the freezer and turn it into the compost pile. But it really helps. It makes it a lot easier. No smells, nothing.
I was about to ask, is there a smell, or is there certain foods that you can't freeze that will smell?
He's a vegetarian, or actually a vegan, so there's no issues there. But generally you don't put meat or oily things like cheese into a compost pile.
I would like to add, thank you, Lee. I would like to add, if you think about the worms, and if you're feeding worms, if you put in the freezer the food you usually give them, once it gets into the worm pile, it will be digested faster. And if you have a lot of life around, a lot of arthropods, the worms won't have so much competition because they do not have teeth, so it's hard for them to chew. So when you put those frozen food, as they unfreeze, they become immediately available to the worms, as long as it's something that's good for them. Most greens are. So thank you, Lee, for the tip. It is very powerful, yes.
And you might have fun reading a book called The Earth Moved, about earthworms. And mostly what the worms are eating is the bacteria and the microbes, not the actual vegetables. So it's nice to have them be alive.
Shelley, what was the name of that book again?
It's called The Earth Moved, and it's a beautifully written book. And yeah, I really recommend it. It's lovely.
Thank you. In our group, Marcela was asking about helping underserved communities in composting. We all know that there's a lot of community gardens in underserved communities, and many times they are, the families are too busy working or don't have the time to compost, and some of their children just don't know how to handle the compost. And so one of my recommendations to her was to really look into LA Compost. LA Compost serves the LA County wider area, and at times, if there's a major need, they actually have a volunteer work out of their sites or specific sites, such as a community garden or a school garden, and they also have programming on a weekly basis on the weekends, and they also have great educational resources on their website. So LA Compost is a great site if anybody has any questions on how to create your own compost, or if you have any questions on troubleshooting your compost. I always recommend them. So thanks for that question, Sarah.
And don't forget, Millie, they're also at the farmers market in downtown LA at the
That's right. Thanks.
historic park.
Yeah.
Good to see them there and people taking their compost there.
Mhm.
Makes a difference. And then we collect it.
That's right.
I attended a United Nations Association presentation at Polytechnic School in Pasadena last night. And one of the students she was a 7th grader when she started this project. She's now an 8th grader. Her name was Audrey, and she got a composting club going at school, and they are now composting all the lunch waste from the middle school. They got this, yes, my heart was just so excited and warmed. Her passion and enthusiasm were outstanding. And their interest now is getting other schools to do that. And I told them I would support them in any way I could, and please let me introduce them to LA Compost. But seeing schools and seeing students get involved, once they know what it is, and they're getting extra credit at school for it, so that makes them happy, but their passion and willingness to work and teach others so that it's better for everyone was really, really admirable. Lovely kid and a wonderful evening.
So I have a question. I live in the San Gabriel Valley in Glendora. Now I have somewhere to drop off my compost, but I did just hear that there's some program, but I don't know if anyone here knows more about it, where they're getting grants to have people that own houses that have space to be like compost hub centers. Does anyone know about that?
I know there's a program in Los Angeles County, and you're in the San Gabriel Valley, so I'm not sure if they apply. But it sounds very similar, where you can go to a composting workshop and they give you a composting bin for free after attending like an hour or 2-hour workshop. But as far as a composting hub, not sure. But I do also know that LA Compost has hubs, maybe even in San Gabriel Valley, because Michael Martinez actually originated LA Compost in the San Gabriel Valley. So look into them, maybe it's them.
Yeah, I'll have to look into it because I know that someone that I've met in the past said that she was thinking of being one of these, places where people could drop off compost. So I know something's starting, but I just don't know a lot about it. But I'll look into it and I'll let you guys know if I find out anything about it.
The Pomona Farmers Market has a really good community of sustainable agriculture people who come there, and they take compostables. I used to drop it off at Pomona Farmers Market on Saturdays.
Okay, and I think it's that group, Eleanor, that started.
Yes.
I think she found, if you know Eleanor, she found grant money somewhere, and I think it's more than just one hub. I want to say there's one in Glendora and there's one maybe somewhere even farther east, but it's kind of discouraging sometimes because I hear about all these amazing projects in LA, but I feel like I'm in kind of a dead zone when it comes to people gathering, with these kinds of subjects, like sustainability, composting, or however. But I'm going to look into it because I know if something's going on, that group in Pomona probably has something to do with it. And maybe I just don't know about it.
Very cool. Juanita, I was also researching today and I came across the California Alliance for Community Composting. I'm not sure if somebody's already posted that on the chat bar, but I'll post their website. They're also accepting grant applications for grants for community composting. So that can also help.
Yeah, and I just want to be able to direct, because sometimes I'll teach the gardening classes, or people will ask me about things like, I want to compost, but I don't have a space. And so I just want to be able to refer people. Yeah, so I'll look into that. That sounds good too.
Yeah, I just posted it on the chat bar for you.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
I'll put my contact information in the chat too. I have a couple methods of backyard composting that are rat proof and really low labor, and questions to ask people when you're setting them up. So you figure out what they have to compost and what their goals are, so that it's the correct amount of work and the kind of product they're looking for.
Yeah, that's great, because that's the first thing that people are worried about. Rats. In fact, I promised my husband when we moved into this house that I wouldn't compost because they were having a rat problem here before we moved in. And so I told him, okay, I won't compost here, but thank goodness I already knew somebody who had their own setup, and yeah. But yeah, I think that would be great. I would love to hear what a rat-proof composting system, that would be amazing.
And low cost, that people can make
And
them.
low cost,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge,
Yeah.
Because I think that would be great for schools, with all that food waste that they have. I mean, they could have an amazing compost going.
I wanted to share a few things we spoke about in our group. We went actually out of the compost and gardening realm and more into undoing things, as undoing, let's say, the effect of poor or bad education, or undoing trauma, shedding, letting go of certain hurtful things. Or if you are, following a diet, you will let go of certain substances that hurt you. So we went more this direction, undoing things, undoing hurtful things, and trying to think and feel new. So I wonder if anyone had, gone on those themes. I would be interested to know.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? That sounds interesting.
Well, there is an experiment taking place in the studio, and it was sort of an inspiration for all of us. It's called Undevelopment 1. And it's not so much the idea of doing something, creating a site, but undoing, breaking the hurtful architecture and infrastructure that was built on top of former thriving living system. It's a site that is right next to the LA River, and that was covered in multiple layers of tar, concrete, bricks. And Lauren Bond decided to see what was still potentially living under all this tarmac and concrete. And we have been doing a lot of experiments in this site. And development was the idea for me that in order to discover the truth and the nature of things, you have kind of undo, remove a lot of hurtful, and it could be in any type of theme. It could be, again, education, could be trauma, it could be natural system versus infrastructure. So that was sort of the start of a discussion and development, and developing versus building and adding on top. It's probably not very clear, but we were not clear anyway.
I think that's a very interesting like expansion of the idea of decomposition, because like when it comes to man-made systems, we tend to just sort of add on, or that seems to be like the impulse is just to like build and build and build. But like, and I mean, I guess we do tear down old infrastructure all the time, but we usually wait for it to fall apart naturally. But I guess thinking about like what is it in our current infrastructure that we could like decompose by like either through policy or like community efforts. I was talking to someone about like the highway system of Los Angeles and like where that like, you know, when that was lobbied for and how that replaced certain like bike lanes from Pasadena, and when, you know, one car companies decided that that was how they wanted the city to expand. And he was like, yeah, like, but what are you going to do? Like, it's so hard to like take apart a highway. And I'm like, well, I think it's honestly harder to build a highway than it is to like take it apart. Like, it's a tremendous amount of energy to like construct it. So like, you know, we dig up pavement all the time. Like, it wouldn't be so difficult for the city to invest their efforts and resources into like tearing up that infrastructure and converting it into something else.
I think since I started working at Metabolic, I've started thinking of it. Like, I always thought infrastructure was kind of this artificial system. And then we've been analyzing the Colorado River Basin and the river itself as like an infrastructure for the life web. And then infrastructure just becomes a way of thinking about, let's say, larger systems, or maybe like primary components of an ecology. So like a large river, so many life forms depend on that river, or maybe like the whole basin is like an infrastructure. So if we're building infrastructures for transportation, for our electrical systems and plumbing, it may be as simple as just considering at the planning scale and the urban scale to think about, what are we doing as an infrastructural strategy for the life web, which is like what kind of policies can create interventions that like permeate the whole city grid. Maybe it's like a compost bin at like every 3 miles within a certain radius, or like a plot of land that's made to be this like organic processing place. Or I don't know if we could think, I think infrastructure is such a powerful concept in terms of like the pervasive natures of like things we do. It seems like policies and infrastructures are kind of go hand in hand, where once it's put in code, it's like disseminated and diffused across the whole city. So if we could come up, with like a policy infrastructure decomposition strategy, I think that could be super amazing. And it could have to do with the roads. It could have to do with, sidewalks. There's so many like opportunities to do that. I don't know, that's what I would share.
And along those lines, maybe you want to start with decomposing capitalism.
I wanted to share that today. I went for a walk, and as I walked out of my apartment, there was a spider, orb weaver, building its web. And me and my friend were just gonna get coffee for a minute. It was a 1 minute walk, and we spent 50 minutes just observing the spider web. But it was fascinating because I've always thought of a spider web and linking into the idea of infrastructure as an idea of constructing something. But the spider so it built a sort of structure around it, and then it started deconstructing its own structure and then it started reconstructing it again. And I was just beyond overwhelmed. I'm still processing that information, but it was just, and I've learned, my friend explained to me that they shift their material properties as they're using the silk. So in the middle, there's a different silk than in the outer part of the web. And it was just, yeah, I'm still thinking about it, but thinking about the spider's web infrastructure and yeah, how just that mindset of constructing was just, so I wanted to share that.
I think that's so in terms of sunk costs in the human world, you know, once we've established something or spent money or started in a certain direction, we don't change course. I love that story.
Well, that reminds me of a study I heard of last year that seems like it might be interesting here, that it was done on people from Germany, United States, and some Asian country that I don't remember. And they looked at how people solve problems, and they found that humans have a strong bias when they're trying to solve a physical problem to add something to it as the way to find the solution. And people don't tend to think of taking something away or simplifying to get to a solution. So once reminded of that as a possibility, then people would evenly think of adding or subtracting to come to a solution. I just thought that was interesting to know that we tend to have a very strong, pretty much universal kind of bias to doing more rather than doing less.
Oh, that's really brilliant, Jamie. And that reminds me of the part in the reading from Masanobu Fukuoka, where he called out the sort of agro-technical recommendation about exactly what poundage of straw to put per square foot on a field for optimal conditions. And he said, well, what's the rest of the straw I'm doing in the corners, just rotting there? If you put that on the soil and just, you know, get it done. The simple principle is to allow decomposition, to return nutrients and to feed the microbiology in the soil. And instead, there's a part of our discursive practices where we feel like human intervention, human genius is necessary for something to happen. So we have to cook this compost very precisely in order for it to, you know, work. When, as Fukuoka correctly points out, throw it on the ground, it's done. Let the worms do their thing.
I think that was also, it ties very well with what Shelley was saying about capitalism, is that if you tell people that there's a need for something and that you should buy this, or you should keep certain amount of this yucky stuff, and you should throw, now you invented a need for, you know, making a new waste. Now you have a garden, well, now you have a new waste. And then your garden doesn't grow well, you should buy these substances. And that is the idea behind it, is that those plants don't need any other stuff that, you know, is man-made, or most of the time. And that's how the world goes. And what we try to do is just pull out, you say removing something, often it's the human equation, like stop doing something, just observe. Observing, I found out just the most powerful tool I ever had, which I didn't have before because I was doing all the time. And the day someone told me like to just pause and then take a step back, I just slowly started to understand things from within. And this, guess what? This is completely free. You don't have to pay anything or anyone to just sit down and breathe and look. And I think that's very powerful. And doing, as you know, starting with yourself is just undoing the burden and doing the hyperactivity. It's one of the most powerful the resource I ever had that helped me understand a little bit better what was happening under my feet. Just shut up, sit down, and look and smell. Thank you.
I love what you said, Michelle, because there was this in the readings we read about the Shiva deity, and then it was a very technical kind of chemical description of the biomicrobials, and then it went back to Taoism, and then I think it went back to a technical description. And when you were speaking, it was like you were able to capture both this like wisdom about the momentum of nature to grow and heal and restore without touching it much, but then the actual like technical process that's going on there. I don't know, for me, it just kind of clicked, the scientific way of describing things, and then the more spiritual or philosophical way of speaking about it. And I think it's an interesting dialogue.
Well, family, we're running into that time. We want to bring this to a closure. Conversation's great, but please come back next week. Next week, our colleague James Oliver, who I believe is in this box somewhere, he will select a reading about the fungi kingdom. So please come back next week. It should be another very interesting reading. And Emily, why don't you show us the Beaver of the Week? And thanks everybody for joining us. Good, everybody.
Night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Great week.
Good night. See
Good
you.
night.
Night, good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. Good job, Mish. Great job. You
Yeah.
did it. You see that?
It was wonderful.
I'm done. Now I can make
I have to